In a party at crossroads where destiny hangs in the balance, the stage is tonight set for a showdown of epic proportions. Welcome to our Election Eve special ahead of the NPP Super Delegates elections tomorrow. Now 10 contenders, 5 slots. Who will rise to claim the throne and secure their place in history? Get ready for a political battle. The clock is ticking to tomorrow. Tonight there are desperate last-minute moves to turn the tide. Aspirants have been busy crisscrossing the country, meeting delegates. Allegations of camping are rife. Behind the scenes, though, alliances will form and loyalties will be tested. But tomorrow, only the top 5 will survive this cutthroat contest. We are here to make sure you don't miss a thing. Tonight, we will lay the analytical foundation for what is to happen tomorrow. We will dig deeper into the political lives of the 10 aspirants and examine their chances. We will let the facts speak for itself. So when you join us tomorrow morning from 7 a.m., you will be armed with information to understand the contest and the outcome it is set to produce. My name is Evans Mensah. This is your election headquarters, and I'm here with
Winston Amwa.
Of course, he is my partner in crime as always. Welcome to our Election Eve special. And we start tonight from the NPP national headquarters, where my colleague Marshall Ababa has been sampling the mood ahead of the special electoral college vote.
High expectations ahead of tomorrow. They were telling us earlier that they want the process to be transparent, they want it to be free, and fair. And they are hoping that the elections would happen in that particular manner. They tell us that they cannot, as it stands right now, they cannot predict and cannot foretell the future. They cannot say who is likely going to win. They think that it is a tight race, and the names that have come up as we've been here for the past 30 minutes, we've had names like Alan Kyerematen, we've had the vice president's name also, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has also come up here. We've also had the name of Kennedy Japan also here. We've also had Adainimo also here. So really, many of the people who we met here earlier are tight-lipped. They do not want to disclose who their choices. They say that that is something that is left for the top officials of the party who are taking part in the special exercise to decide. But they have their favorite, and it is their wish that tomorrow their leaders, the top officers of the party, would vote for those who they wish, will lead the party come November. They said they are aware that this is just to prune down the number to 5, and the main thing is going to happen on November 5. But it is their wish that their candidates will make it to November 5 and finally get to lead the party in the 2024.
And thank you, Maxwell. Let's cross over now to the stronghold of the governing NPP, the Ashanti region. Nana Yaljima is live from the capital, Kumasi, where 119 delegates, the largest, will be queuing to cast their ballot. And Nana, this is the place to watch. It is the party stronghold. From what you've been sampling, what's the move there? I know ahead of any elections in Ashanti region, you see a lot of activity. Am I right? Are you seeing that on the ground?
Within the New Patriotic Party in the Ashanti region, I'm learning that a lot of the delegates who are outside the region are back home. And tomorrow they'll be making their way to the KNUST Law Faculty Auditorium to ensure that they cast their ballots. 119 delegates, super delegates, are participating in the election tomorrow. I'll bring in my colleague Nana Bwachi Dankwa Yadom. He'll give us a breakdown of the 119 who will be casting their ballot tomorrow. Nana,
All right, so Nana, we have 119 delegates who will be participating in tomorrow's Super Delegates Conference of the New Patriotic Party, which will be to trim the number of 10 aspirants to 5. So regional executives will be casting their votes in the Ashanti region are 17 with 3 proxies. We have National Council representatives, there are 6 of them. We have founding members, 7 with 1 proxy. We have constituency chairmen, 46 of them with 1 proxy. And members of parliament, 42 of them with 3 proxies. And the regional minister Simon Osei Mensah, also adding up to make it 119 delegates participating in tomorrow's Super Delegate Conference of the New Patriotic Party.
7 out of the 10 candidates for the election are from the Ashanti region. They all hail from the Ashanti region. They've been to the region and they've campaigned extensively within the region. Some of them have been receiving some endorsements from some of the people who will be participating in this particular election. On Wednesday, some people within the Kwadaso constituency declared support for their former member of parliament, Dr. Osei Efrie, that's the former Agric minister, and they say that those who are participating should ensure that they vote him and make him one of the 5. Afterwards, they, as delegates who will be participating in the election, in the main delegates conference, will ensure that they put him first to represent the NPP or to be the flag bearer for the NPP in the upcoming election. I know that others have also been declaring support for the other aspirants, including some chairman within the Ashanti region New Patriotic Party.
All right, so you know, former the member of parliament for Bosomche and Minister for Education Osei Aweduchum, just yesterday he was in our studio here and he declared his support for Vice President Dr. Alhaji Mahamudu Bawumia. The former Minister for Education and current Minister for Energy, Matthew Opoku Prempe, has declared his support. Osei Chairman Sabonso, on numerous occasions, have also declared his support for the Vice President Dr. Alhaji Mahamudu Bawumia. Just yesterday and before today, some constituency chairmen across the region declared their support for Dr. Alhaji Mahamudu Bawumia. They say that considering his sacrifice to the New Patriotic Party, he deserves to lead them. Moreover, subsequently, I would say, become president of the Republic of Ghana. He's been receiving endorsement also from some regional executives who under normal circumstances are restricted from endorsing some of these candidates.
Already when Dr. Bawumia was in the Ashanti region, we understand that Chairman Wuntumi, that's the Ashanti region NPP chairman, also declared support for him.
Very much indeed, and that is really setting the stage for tomorrow, and I'm grateful, Anaya Abwachi, and of course giving us this understanding of what is going to happen in the stronghold of the NPP, and it is one of the places to watch for obvious reasons, not only because the delegate numbers there is 119, the closest to that is Greater Accra, which is just 70 plus. So that tells you a lot is riding on that. And one of the front runners in Alan Kyerematen sees that as his base.
Exactly, Evans, you're right. And Alan Kyerematen sees the Ashanti region as his base. As part of his campaign, he's talked about how he can actually get 2 million votes from the Ashanti region. And so going into this election in the Ashanti region, you're asking yourself the simple question, what will the results be? But of course, I mean, I started yesterday on the Small Morning Show by making this point that this is the special electoral college, but we've called it Super Delegates. So let me just continue and say Super Delegates Congress. Now, you have about 961 persons voting. 961 persons voting, if you do the math, is less than 1% of those who would vote on the 4th of November. There are those who have made the point, and you've seen Kojo Poku make the point, for instance, that there are no winners, and the most important thing, the losers are those who don't make it into the top 5. So for those who make it into the top 5, this is not an issue. And so you've asked a very important question. Because Alan Kyerematen comes from the Ashanti region, you want to see his performance in the Ashanti region. But if you speak to the Alan Kyerematen campaign team, they've made one thing very obvious. They say the most important thing is to get into the top 5.
By the way, pause for a minute because we are going to be spending some time on each of the 10 aspirants. Who are they? Here they are. We know that in no particular order, by the way, Kennedy Dupont is featuring very strongly. We'll tell you what delegates have been saying about him. And for many people in the party, he is the dark horse. He's the one that could pull a surprise. He's the one that possibly could even become a kingmaker down the line in November.
Exactly. I mean, Kennedy Dupont is like is more of your Donald Trump in Ghana. He's that person who resonates so much with the party's grassroots. Now, if this election were actually open to everybody, we would say this is going to be an election. Why? Because then you have Kyerematen in there, one person the party sees as, the party grassroots see as their representative. They see him as the person who talks on their behalf, who supports the party, a no-nonsense person, one who can make sure that even appointees will do the right thing. Kyerematen is coming into this race. Of course, he's coming into this race because of comments about who he supports and who he doesn't support. He made the point that, look, he could also be president. He feels it is his time. The question is, where would he place? We'll get into that analysis.
Yeah, where will he place is important, and that would mean a lot for also the front runners. One of them is Alan Kyerematen, who, by the way, as we know, has been very busy today. All of them have been really meeting. Both of us know the last minutes are the most dangerous moments in everything, but especially in politics. And today he needs to make sure that the commitments received from these special electoral college voters will hold, and that's why meetings are happening tonight.
It's very important, Evans, because as you rightly indicated, the last days are the last hours, if I could put it that way, are very important in every election. I've been speaking to some of the members of the Alan Kyerematen team, and they've said that if what they gather is anything to go by, he would have a very good showing. He would have a very good showing. And what they say is he would have a very good showing come tomorrow.
And we'll get into that because I've been speaking today to Babia Sama, who actually has been saying something similar to what you've just been saying there. And then you have Joe Gatti, who of course used to be the Attorney General under Kufuor. He's been Railway Minister under this current government, and he still wants to be in this particular race. We'll talk about historical performance for him very shortly, so let's not spend too much time on that now, because we'll come and isolate each and every one of them and tell you what they bring to the table. Then you have Kojo Poku. We just mentioned him. He's been talking a lot today.
I just say a thing or two about Joe Gatti. The fact that Joe Gatti, a fine gentleman, happens to have emerged at the time where there are equally other fine gentlemen, and it becomes a problem for you. So 1 year you're very fine, you're a fine gentleman, you have all the qualities of a president, but you emerge at the wrong time. And that probably could be Joe Gatti's problem.
And so that's Joe Gatti, that's Kojo Poku, who is of course a new face in this whole endeavor, but he believes he has a chance to be in the top 5, and that same, of course, Dr. Kojo Efriakoto, just running through the faces for you, who is a former Greek minister, who also believes he has a right to this, actually, because of all his leanings, but also relationships and commitments to the party.
Yeah, this is the son of Bafo Seyakuto, the former chief linguist of the Asante Hene, the founder of the National Liberation Movement. So, he's held lectures about the role of Bafo Seyakuto in Ghana's independence struggle, in Ghana's politics and everything. Tomorrow will determine. We'll come back to him.
We'll see. Tomorrow, we'll see where he places. Kwamla Jupon was here in my studios speaking to me on PM Express, and he believes indeed he also, of course, has a claim to this. And his launch got a lot of rave reviews when he did that, and laid out his foundation and laid out his policies and programs for this country, for the party. Then, of course, Adainimo is also in there. With
I just would put Kwamla Jupon in the same league as Joe Gatti. Fine gentlemen, they emerged at the wrong time.
Well, okay. We'll see. Adainimo has been there. He's contested this before in 2014, right? And the showing wasn't great in that particular race, but he's come back. And then Kododo Apreku has, together with Alan Kyerematen, they have the most experience as far as the presidential race is concerned. He actually was the first among the lot here currently contesting to show his face in 1998 presidential primary, where he was third.
Yes, Evans, look, the thing about Kofi Konedo Apreku is that he showed up in 1990, even before 1998, in the 1992 NPP primaries. He was campaigning for one of the candidates. I'll tell you more about that later on, of course. But this is Kofi Konedo Apreku, and he's been there. You've talked about it 4 times. Now, this man is one person you would expect to be up there. Unfortunately, in 1998, in the Sunyani Congress, where he polled 52, by 2007, he was getting 19 votes.
Yeah, well, hold on. No, don't throw the numbers yet. There are a lot of numbers to throw about, but the numbers tell a story. So hold on to the numbers as far as he's concerned, and then we'll come to him when we settle on him properly. As I said, all of them will get a take. Boakye Jacko was here, also talking about his own ambitions for this, and he wants to first radically change the party, bring discipline, but also use his expertise if he wins or not and wins the presidential slot for the party and the national elections, bring his expertise from New York to play. And also, he was a former energy minister under this current government. That didn't quite end well.
He's been director of policy. He's been campaign director of the Akufo-Addo campaign before. A very fine gentleman. When we get into his zone, when we single him out, there are a lot of things you want to say. Also look at the timing he's coming into the race and whether that's actually the right time. Aid not on his side. What becomes of Boakye Jacko?
Yep.
We'll talk about that.
And then, of course, the vice president, who obviously many have said, together with Kyerematen, are the two front runners. And he comes into this as a sitting vice president, like others before him, like the vice president, his so rest in perfect peace, Professor Milks, who also one time was the second and then also tried to contest and wins. Of course, others in his own party have tried in the vice president's position and had not quite done as well as an Aliu Mahama, coming from the same stock, by the way, from the north. And so he comes to this with a lot to lose, but a lot to gain. And they say they want to win this tomorrow. They don't want to just be top 5. They want to win this.
I mean, you made a very important point when you brought in the Mills argument, because in the NDC we've seen, for instance, after Mills comes in and Mills eventually becomes president, you have John Mahama coming in and eventually becoming president. The NPP has a history of just one vice president attempting and not winning. It's not enough to build a trend for you to say this is the NPP's trend, but you can actually say that in the NDC you've seen instances where vice presidents eventually become presidents. Will that change for the NPP?
We'll see. So these are the top 10 candidates indeed. And by the way, by the time that we end tomorrow, 5 of these individuals, their presidential ambitions will be terminated by the Special Electoral College. So let's get into a bit more of the very interesting analysis, looking at the party's own history when it comes to presidential primaries and the numbers. And the first thing you begin to notice is that the NPP, they play in significant numbers when it comes to primaries. You go to 1992, for example, where you have Eduboahin contesting. You have Jan Selby also in there, who, by the way, came second in this. Eduboahin wins this by 51% of the votes. Then you have a certain J. Kufuor, right, who comes in third with 16% of the vote. Jan Selby then scores 19%. But then the number is quite interesting there in 1992. You come to 1996, it drops to 6 in terms of the people contesting. Something happens here with J. Kufuor because then he steps in. He moves from 16% to win that particular race in a 50.
Exactly. I mean, J. Kufuor gets to win this particular race, but also there are a lot of people who feel that the stepping down, not the stepping down, he was taken to court. Kwame Pienim. Now, Kwame Pienim at the time was seen as a front runner. Now, the NPP goes to court, not the NPP. Somebody goes to court. A private citizen goes to court challenging the eligibility of Kwame Pienim. Kwame Pienim then is disqualified from the race. There are those who believe that Kwame Pienim threw his weight behind J. Kufuor, and that's actually what did the trick for, J. Kufuor in there. But there's another name that is of importance here. Jones Oforiatta shows up in 1996. Now, Jones Oforiatta is the father of the finance minister, Ken Oforiatta. He gets about 66 votes. And Dr. Jan Selby at the time, polling only 24 votes.
Yeah.
He places last from second in 1992 to last in 1996. But therefore, that's where J. Kufuor emerges as the NPP's flag bearer.
And he wins that. And in 1998 is the first time we saw one of the aspirants currently, we just talked about him, Konodo Apreku, coming in third place. But the thing is, he only got 52%. He got 52 votes.
Yes.
2%, right? And there we saw a certain gentleman who is currently the president of this republic. Exactly.
I mean, Evans, that's where you see J. Kufuor coming up again. And in the build up to that election, it was a two-horse race, J. Kufuor, Nana Akufo-Addo. There are many who felt that it was going to be Akufo-Addo at the time. But history would show you that J. Kufuor showed the politician that he was. And in those days, you actually had, all delegates meeting at a place. And so they met in Sunyani at the time. And when I say all delegates meet at a place, you understand what I'm trying to say. Well, if you do not, I will be very blunt and tell you, when all delegates meet at a place, apart from all the campaigns and everything, the one who is most resourced also gets to make a showing. And J. Kufuor was very resourced at the time. He's a strategic politician. and he won by over 1,000 votes. Akufo-Addo polling some 600.
So that's it. That's it. There. That's J. Akufo, just winning this by 64%. Akufo-Addo comes in second place by 34%. But he did great.
He did great. But then because Kofi Kunedu-Apreku is in this race, let's talk about it a little bit. Because at age 44, Kofi Kunedu-Apreku
was in third.
Was in third position with 52 votes.
With 52 votes.
Yes.
And that was, at that time, it was 2%.
And at that time, it was 2%. A lot of votes.
That was a lot of votes, yes.
Because look, Malik Al-Hassan, I think he had 7. J.H. Mensah had 3.
Yeah.
And Reverend Kodia had 9 or so.
Yeah, and you're talking about J.H. Mensah.
J.H. Mensah, I mean.
Stars of the party,
exactly.
very well done, very eloquent. And yet, he was beaten by Apreku.
He was beaten by Apreku. And in fact, the funny thing is that in those times, you had so you had 2,000 delegates. Every constituency, you had 200 constituencies. Every constituency presented 10. Every constituency brought 10 delegates to vote. Now, this election was held in Sunyani. J.H. Mensah was a member of parliament for Sunyani East.
Yeah.
So you were expecting J.H. Mensah to actually even get 10. If for nothing at all, you get 10. Because Kofi Kunedu-Apreku, as member of parliament for Finso North, gets more than 10. He gets 52. Yeah. So you can reasonably infer that all his party guys get to vote for him. But of course, this is where Akufo-Addo makes a strong showing, and this is where the whole argument about I will be president before you starts.
Yeah, and then it's reported that then J. Akufo tells Akufo-Addo, yeah, you're doing good, but wait for your turn.
Wait for your turn.
When I leave, you come in. So that's a very significant moment, and we see one of the current contenders in this particular race there. And then we come to, of course, each time that they had an incumbent in power, when you're going to the next election, is unopposed. You see that here too. But then you come to 2007, the big one, where you have 17. 17 of them showed up, tried to contest. There too, a certain Kunedu-Apreku showed up.
Yes, he shows up again and gets 19% or 19 votes.
19 votes. But also in there, others in this current race were with him. They had Wache Jaku, who had 10.
Yes.
And then you also have Kwamena Japan, who had 9.
Yes.
So he did better then.
He did better
than those two.
But,
and of course, I mean, we had Alan Kyerematen, who was also in the race
showing up. He put over 700 votes. But you see, this is the point. If you're Kofi Kunedu-Apreku, who's been there in 1998, now in politics you build on showings. But of course, when we move on, we probably would realize that a lot of things may change along the line. But when the delegate numbers begin to increase, then you begin to look at things differently. The problem with 2007 and Kofi Kunedu-Apreku is that it was the same format. It's the same format.
Same format, yeah.
So in that case, you're asking what has
Although
changed?
the delegates numbers had moved from 1,900 to 2,000, just over 2,200.
Yes. Yeah, but the point is that it's the same format.
Same format, yeah.
So
meeting in one place to vote.
And voting.
Yeah.
So what changed for Kofi Kunedu-Apreku? And that is where you'd realize, we'll get to Kofi Kunedu-Apreku later, but that's when you realize his diminishing returns setting.
Sets in, yeah.
So that's where, if you're a Kofi Kunedu-Apreku, you would have realized that you are down.
Yeah, and we talked about the 3 who are also in this contest who were there, who all did poorly, including Kunedu-Apreku, 19 for him, 10 for Wache Jaku, 9 for Kwamena Japan. But then let's isolate Alan Kyerematen, who at that time managed to get 32% of the votes in that race, against Nana Addo's 47%.
7%, yeah.
In that particular election.
Yeah.
And this was interesting. The first time the party, one person isn't able to cross that 50+1 required to win an outright vote. And then what happens? They decide to go for a runoff. But then, of course, Alan Kyerematen did something where he says,
I'm not going to contest again. Where he says, I'm going to let my senior brother go. And this is actually where the whole thing begins.
It's a major turning point.
I mean, so the turning point is here.
Yeah. Let me second it for you.
Yes, in 2007. That's where there's a turning point in the NPP's presidential primaries. Because there you have it, one candidate not leading, but not making the more than 50%. Another with 32%. But then it was an acrimonious contest.
Absolutely acrimonious.
You saw all the violence there.
It was, I remember being there when Lord Comey had picked up the mic and alleged that Afoko was distributing dollar bills to delegates. And then this threw up the entire Congress into acrimony. At that time, Mark Menu was the chairman. It was rumored that he had lost control. They had now to go into discussions to try and bring it back on board and then move along. That succeeded somewhat, but it was too acrimonious. And then there was this negotiated outcome.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, now, and let me be very, very blunt here. Going into that particular election, perception at the time, the allegation at the time, was that the incumbent president then, J.A. Kufuor, was supporting Alan Kyerematen.
Yes.
Now,
Alan Cash.
Jobs for the boys.
Jobs for the boys.
Cash for the
cash
people.
for the people.
So, I mean, he was all over the place, having submitted his form in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Takes the form, and in 24 hours, he gets it filled, he submits it to the party. So, when they went into, after the elections, where he had to go into a second round, based on acrimony. Now, there's a school of thought that says the former president then advises Alan Kyerematen not to go.
Yeah.
There was too much tension in the party already for the party to go into a second round. And this is where Alan Kyerematen says, I made the sacrifice.
That's
Because-
where he draws his sacrifice, which is part of his campaign message now.
Exactly.
Plus, a Drew missile.
Plus, Nanado saying, let me tell you what President Kufuor told me. You will be president after me.
Okay. So that's where the inspiration is coming from.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you've heard this said in this campaign. And if you watch his billboards, he has the Drew missile on it.
Yeah.
He's actually signaling to the people who support him and the party's base that this history we just been telling you is what indeed. And I was reading a very fascinating research done by the Bradford University, in which it was suggested that many people at the time felt that he was an outsider, a newcomer, who had been handpicked by Kufuor, and even in this race, he should have known better because Kufuor had made a promise, right? We talked about 1998, that wait for my turn, and then Kufuor somehow was attempting to consolidate his base and control the forces going in and anoint somebody who then continues and perpetuates his legacy. Listen, there's a lot more to talk about, and so let's move on because we'll come and answer
on
it
that particular note, and when we get, we'll talk about it again, because I also do know that there's a school of thought today who blame Kufuor for where the NPP is. They tell him that maybe he should have been a bit firm. Maybe
and so pushed him.
he should have pushed and controlled the party even as former president. Okay, so they still blame him. They say, you should have pushed and controlled the party even as former president. He will tell you, no, let the party decide whom they want to lead.
Okay, and then we come to 2010. Lessons learned here applied in this particular one.
I mean, I was at a trade fair site in August 2009 when the NPP was actually,
Changing the constitution, etc.
analyzing,
Yeah.
for instance, their, election 2008 performance. And I remember at the time, Elizabeth Ohene make the point. Elizabeth Ohene, I remember, make the point, for instance, that look, when the NPP said they're going to go for polling station executive, she made the point at the time that look, I contested in the Volta region, I contested in Whole West. There were polling stations where I got 0. So if you tell me you're going to have polling station executives vote, how come I got 0 when you're supposed to have 5? Where are the NPP members? But this is one of the things, this is where some analysts make a point. They say this is the beginning of certain issues for Alan Kyerematen and others, and others plain. They say in 2009, the amendment of the Constitution was made to favor Nana Akufo-Addo. It was made to, even though at the time they talked about, we need to broaden the numbers that vote because we don't want vote buying, they knew at the time that they had an executive that leaned towards Akufo-Addo, an executive that was willing to get things done in that way because they felt that was the way to go to make sure that going forward, he would then assume control of the party. A lot of the Kufuor elements at the time fought it, but they didn't get it through.
And so it was 106,000 delegates.
Yes. In
106,000 delegates. And that also applied in 2014. Akufo-Addo wins this very handsomely with 78.8%. Come to 2014, he wins it again in the first round with 80%. Alan Kyerematen only manages a paltry 9% in the first round, goes to second round, again annihilated. a certain Another wins again 94%.
But here, you have to make the point. You have to make the point that of the three, you had Adainimu.
Okay, so
Francis Adainimu.
Well, he came third.
He came third. He put about 1,000 votes.
Yeah.
But he also had Joe Garte and Kofi Osei stepping down.
Yeah.
Now they made the top 5 because he had more than 5. He had 7 people
in the Super Delegates.
In the Super Delegates, but then they stepped down and threw their weight behind Akufo-Addo.
Yeah.
So they supported Akufo-Addo.
And now you made a point that will come to play about the conversations about forming an alliance in case of a runoff in November. We'll come to that. And then, of course, when you go to the 2020, it was unopposed. And then we are talking about now with 10. So this is a history of the NPP when it comes to the primary. So they've learned a lot of lessons here that if applied to the rest of it. In other words, here, sharing of money, we want to break that front. And it was very acrimonious to the point where Alan Kyerematen had to resign at some point. And it left the party.
He indicated.
Well, I mean, today I actually pulled out. I actually pulled out the resignation letter,
which indicated his attempt to resign.
But the point was that fracture. And his concern was his own people. His own people were being victimized.
Let me make this point because let me make this point because in the NPP, you need to be 5 years in order to contest. If Alan Kyerematen had resigned then, he would not have qualified to contest in 2010. His resignation was not accepted. And so
there was a lot of backroom conversations to get him back. In fact, Darocha, God bless his memory, attempted going into conversations with him, trying even Kufuor himself also.
Kufuor did all of it. So
and he wasn't grieved.
He did not resign. If he had resigned, and I know this, I'll tell you one thing.
I mean, but he tendered a resignation.
Yeah, but turning in resignation is
but that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, but I'm going to make this one. Let's come up. I want to make this point. And I want to say this. I know, for instance, meetings in 2010. I know where they held those meetings, attempting to disqualify him because they felt at the time
he had
resignation. But at the end of all those meetings, it was realized that he did not resign. And so because he didn't resign, because the party did not accept his resignation, and because he was brought back into the race, he was brought back into the party to actually then support Akufo-Addo in the 2008 campaign as chairman of identifiable groups, he qualified to contest in 2010.
And another thing, when we come to it, we talk about this identifiable groups thing act him. I mean, because then, really, what is that all I can contribute to the race?
And I'm sure Akufo-Addo learned his lessons in 2016. When we get there, we'll talk about that.
Again, let's look at why. Then we are learning from 2017.
Yeah.
And so they put this in your constitution to say, in case you have more than 5 people in any race, what you do is you hold a special electoral college, which is going to happen tomorrow. We've drawn out already. We're not going to dwell on this, which is the thing. And now we come to 2007 in terms of the rates, which we've just gone through already quickly. We've just gone through the numbers for Akufo-Addo, 47%. The rest coming in. Oh, Dangote was also in there in this particular race as well. And the Papa Usman was there. He's currently the High Commissioner, trying also his luck in that particular race. There you see the point we've been making there. There you see the rest of Wache, Jacko, and Co. who had also all tried to contest in this particular race. You see Dr. Konuda Preku. I mean, look, the 0.29%, I wanted to stay out because I want the votes itself. That's why I kept on saying what they got. So this is the 2017 picture we're telling you about. Atta Kennedy was also there. He does a single vote in that particular race. 2010, we talked about that. First time we have 106,000 delegates voting. Now we're going to have more than 200,000 in elections.
Let me say something. Down the line. Let me say something.
Yes.
This man, he contested in 1996. So John Kwame Kudia, Reverend Kudia, at the point in time said they drew me so. He also said they drew me so. Because he said, but I mean, I've been there. I was there with the people. But of course, he didn't really make any impression.
So you see, and many also suggest that Alan Kyerematen's context in the 2010 elections, he only did so because he wanted to stay in the queue.
Yes.
He wanted to stay in the queue. Because, of course, he knew by this time that Akufo-Addo had an absolute control over the party at the time. There was no way he was going to win, but he had to be in there.
In fact, it becomes very obvious in 2014. In the 2014 election, Alan Kyerematen knew.
Okay, you're talking about 2014?
2014.
So let's go there.
Let's go to 2014.
So this is the 2014. Yeah. This is first of all, this is the super delegates. This is what we are having the equivalent. This is the first time they actually
have to use
because of the numbers, right? 2014. Now this is the picture. Your point is?
Yeah, my point is that at this time, Alan Kyerematen knew that there was no way he was going to beat Akufo-Addo. And you remember Omar Tuama Obum, you remember the Akufo-Addo video after that election where he and Alan Kyerematen were on the phone and he was laughing. Oh, yeah, Omar Tuama, I'm sure you remember that particular video. So here, he only comes in to also make a showing. Keep his name up there in the minds of delegates. Because then his understanding is that after Akufo-Addo, it will be my turn. And so he's just biding his time, waiting patiently. So he goes into the race. He doesn't really do a lot of campaigning at the time. You know, he stays in there, just knows that Akufo-Addo is going to win. And at the time, I mean, I saw members of parliament all, endorsing Akufo-Addo. He was the man of the moment.
He was completely the man of the moment. There's a point I wanted to make with the party itself in terms of the numbers that context in primaries. If you look at when we went through the history of the primaries and the numbers, I noticed that each time the party is about to lose an election, you have the list of aspirants either 10 or above. Because you have 17 in 2007, and now we have 10 just before the 8th year mark is reached. That maybe says something. And that is why, the only variable that's different now, the time they did this in 2007, they didn't have this huge electoral college decision where that goes into this first round of sifting out and then the second round. But the point I've heard people make when you look at here is that people look at 2014 and say, Akufo-Addo carried this 80% into the real final lap in the actual primary, right? And improved on the 80. The Bawumia camp have actually made the point that because that is their only history they can point to, they really tomorrow will want to hit numbers 70 and above. So they can go into November with that sort of wind in their sail and momentum. Do they have a point? Considering that Akufo-Addo did that.
Well, I mean, if I look at this, and this is something that happened in 2014, we have one scenario to look up to. And if you want to do the analysis, you probably would say, let's look at 2, 3 and come to a conclusion. But yes, you have a particular situation here. Ask yourself very simple questions. Is Akufo-Addo the same, or the kind of aura around Akufo-Addo at the time, the kind of dominance he had in the NPP at the time, the same as Dr. Bawumia? In 2014, you heard the chairman of the party say some rules are better violated than adhered to. You did that interview. You remember?
Yeah.
Freddie Blake, acting chairman.
Yeah.
He said some rules are, best violated than actually. In 2014, Akufo-Addo was the man of the moment. In 2014, Akufo-Addo and the NPP had gone to court in 2013 to say they did not lose the election. After that, Akufo-Addo leaves the country, goes to Britain, comes back, and actually, even before he came back, you had people calling on him to come and contest. And I remember so well that speech that he gave. Oh, a short man, not so handsome and everything, coming in there. The way the party was there for Akufo-Addo in 2014, it's not the same as you see it now.
But the counter argument to that is, Akufo-Addo is the only person who's managed to draw this number of votes in the super delegates to the actual conference. Considering that Bawumia's cloth is tied very closely to his in terms of legacy, in terms of service. They've been at this together since 2008. Can he deliver? And remember, the Special Electoral College, as defined the party's constitution, were the same people who voted there. Right? The point there is, does he hold the same sway over the Special Electoral College? Can he? I'm talking about tomorrow, not even November. Can he deliver working behind the scenes through surrogates? Because he can't do it himself. That's why publicly he's been saying, I'm not supporting it. But me and you know that he has a horse in this race. He must have a horse in the race. Somebody who can perpetuate his legacy. And the logical conclusion is he must be Bawumia. So can he behind the scenes deliver these same numbers or something close to this percentage transfer that for Bawumia, at least to make that showing tomorrow, to show to the rest of the field and the delegates who will be voting the rest of the field in November that, look, this is an indication of who to vote for, because the leaders, this elite group of people, have chosen him. Can he deliver that for him tomorrow? And what would that mean if he could?
he can actually deliver that for him. Akufo-Addo can deliver that. And I'll tell you why. You have 137 members of parliament. We have seen the NPP members of parliament. We have seen even when they called for the sacking of Kenneth Oriata, eventually they didn't even take part in the censure vote. So that after they had a meeting at they met the National Executive Committee and they met, the president and everything. They battled down. So he can deliver this for him. And I'll tell you a simple thing. I'll make a point. Look, in 2007, all the election watchers knew what happened at the time. You had MMDCs voting. You realize you saw the changes here and there. When the party is in government, the president has a lot of influence on how the elections would go, particularly when it comes to his appointees. And it's the reason you probably may have heard, people make the point again that we're going into this election to select 5 people who will contest the main election. I am saying that because you have this number, in Akufo-Addo's case, he was the man.
Yeah, but can he now transfer?
He can transfer
that to Bawumia.
He can transfer
tomorrow.
He can transfer that to Bawumia in the Super Delegates Congress. But this is the point. Listen carefully to everybody who's contesting in the NPP today. And listen to everybody trying so hard to make the point that this is what I intend to do. Listen to everybody.
In terms of the alliances they want to form?
No, I'm going to conclude on that point. I'm going to conclude right now. Listen to everybody making the point. Even Bawumia saying, I have my own vision. Listen to the followers of Bawumia make a certain point. They say, yes, as vice president, I am supposed to support the president. Whatever the president wants me to do is what I will do for him.
The point is he may not be as popular.
My point today is simply this. Akufo-Addo is not as popular in the NPP as he was in 2014. Akufo-Addo, within the grassroots of the NPP today, is not as popular as he was in 2014. There are people within the NPP, within the grassroots of the NPP, who are unhappy with Akufo-Addo. And that is why you would see even Bawumia make the point that I have my own vision.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody is going to campaign on Akufo-Addo's performance.
Except, though, resources matter in elections.
They do.
And that is where the president becomes important for Bawumia.
Yes.
Right? And because and look, you go back to 2007. The reason why Alan Cash was Alan Cash, because he was an establishment candidate then.
Yes.
And he had all the resources in his camp, right? The point is, he still didn't quite manage to do it, right? You come to 2023 as they go in. Again, Bawumia requires the resources that the president has. And the president himself will not be doing it. He will be using surrogates in the campaigning, in the ability beyond the Special Electoral College. Those resources may become relevant. In fact, it will become relevant in the swing of the bigger delegates across the country.
I expect Bawumia, there is no way he will not make the top 5.
As of tomorrow,
there's no way.
In fact, his people say it's not about making the top 5 for him. It's about winning it and winning it in the 70s.
But because my position is that, my understanding of all of this is that the party wants to reduce the numbers to 5, I wouldn't want to go into an argument of who wins. But if you were to do 1, 2, of course they'll do 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Bawumia will be up there.
Yeah.
That is non-negotiable. But again, the point is that you're reducing the numbers to 5, and 5A will be. In this, look, in 2007, if the elections were to have a Super Delegates Congress, at the time, Alan Kyerematen.
Let's focus on him for a second.
May have won that.
Let's focus on him for a second.
I mean, he didn't have that, so let me not even get into that, because he has the support of the establishment.
And this will be the final part of part 1 of our analysis. The part 2 will bring in Alan Kyerematen, will bring in Dr. Bawumia, and then the others, because we believe they are the 2 front runners. And then there is obviously the Kennedy Japons of this world. So this is Alan, right? And what we've tried to do is to isolate Alan's performance in the primaries over the period. And I want to draw a line that for me starts to make a point. If you put in that, what it shows you is Alan's performance in primaries, the 4 times he's done year on year, is on a decline in terms of performance among delegates. When was the last time the Special Electoral College voted? The last time the Special Electoral College voted, as we just described, was in 2014, as described in the party's constitution. And they had 9%. And we've discussed that extent. I don't want to repeat that because of the strength of Akufo-Addo then. So if you draw this line here through what he showed in his performance in primaries, that could alarm you to say the delegates who have been voting over the period, some of them are still part of this. Some of them will still be part of November, right? Some of them will still be part of, at least in 2010, right? It was 106,000. It's going to be 200,000 plus next year.
Yeah.
So a significant part of them will be in a larger number down the line beyond tomorrow. And you have a lot of them still here. But of course, the bigger factor here, which is not still part in the 2023 one we are talking about, is Akufo-Addo. He wasn't in the race.
Exactly. I mean,
but this trend isn't a good trend for him.
Well, I mean, Evans, let me make this point. We could do a few things. We could do some analysis. Do we have a lot of time? Okay, we'll probably do this. So let's look at the correlation here. Alan Kyerematen, Akufo-Addo go into an elections. Then you ask yourself also, what were the factors at play? What influenced Alan Kyerematen's performances within those periods? In 2007, we know that story so well, we're not going to get back into that story. In 2010, we know the story. We know that after the expansion of the delegate list to 106,000, he doesn't make it. He gets about 19,000. Akufo-Addo wins that handsomely. But then by this year, we know that it was Akufo-Addo throughout. You're right. If Alan Kyerematen was contesting against Akufo-Addo, you probably would have said, done deal, Agbena. But that would not have also been fair, because then you would have asked yourself the conditions at the time. So it's not okay just looking at it and say, let's go back. It's not okay just looking at it and saying, that's it. Because he has this trend of a reducing margin over the period, that's the end of it. It could so be that he may perform same. But I am also looking at the conditions of the time. Now I'm beginning to put in the qualitative aspect of the analysis and saying the conditions of the time. So the conditions of the time in 2014 are not the conditions today. The conditions of the time in 2014, it was Akufo-Addo. There was no way anybody in the MP was going to beat Akufo-Addo. By 2016, you'd have realized something. Akufo-Addo goes round campaigning with an Alan Kyerematen. By 2016, everywhere Akufo-Addo was, you saw an Alan Kyerematen.
But here's the argument, the counter-argument to that. Because as of the time we're talking about 2010, the Akufo-Addo factor wasn't only solely him. It was always from 2008 has been Akufo-Addo Bawumia. Has been Akufo-Addo Bawumia. By 2010, Akufo-Addo Bawumia. Of course, he was the only person at the time on that particular ballot when it went into the primaries. So that Akufo-Addo factor also was rubbing off with Bawumia.
I disagree.
And then you go to 2014, still, he had carried him from 2008 into 2012, into 2016. So he's carried him all the way through.
Akufo-Addo has carried Bawumia through all the national elections.
Yes.
Akufo-Addo has campaigned on his own in party elections.
Yeah, but remember, the delegates.
So we can have
the reason why that is important, the Bawumia factor in even the primary is important. The delegates in the north, right? Remember, if Akufo-Addo had gone to the north to campaign among the NPP delegates, then what do you think his message would have been? I'm the man who has one of your own on my ticket in 2008. It's that's important for a campaign message. And I have carried him in spite of objections. Remember that at the time I was appointing him in 2000, not everybody wanted about me on the ticket. Where he dropped from. I carried him in spite of the objections. We lost the elections. I still brought him back in 2012. That will hold sway among delegates in the north, which he needed. And when we come to Bawumia, you realize that Bawumia began to show quite strong show in the north. He had a lot of sway there. That is why I say that Akufo-Addo factor and the number of delegates that were coming from the northern regions then would have been a part to play in Akufo-Addo's overwhelming showing then. You cannot disregard
one of the things I'd say, at least I I saw Akufo-Addo campaign in 2014. I saw Akufo-Addo campaigning in the Super Delegates Congress. And I saw how Akufo-Addo campaigned in those visits, for instance. In 2014, Evans, when Akufo-Addo comes to your constituency, he comes to a region, he doesn't say anything. When he comes to Sudan, I'll give you a typical example. Before the 2014 Super Delegates Conference, I was then practicing in Takrady. I was in Takwa, where Akufo-Addo showed up there to campaign. They had invited all the members of parliament. Before Akufo-Addo spoke, they gave the microphone to every member of parliament to actually now declare his support for Akufo-Addo. That's what happened. So you pick the microphone and you say, Abeya Yeko Akoti.
He was anointed one.
Yes, sir. Yene na nado ni yene roko. Yekunge nyina yim there. 2012. We yen. Yene magenado by a president. One sanfanambra. I mean, the explanation is that we know that in the 2012 elections, we didn't lose. It was a stolen verdict. Bring back Akufo-Addo, and then he gets, he will become the president of this country. One person, I remember him very well. I mentioned his name today. I've not mentioned it, but I mentioned it. Joe Bidwansa. When he was given the microphone, he said, "Oh, Nanado Eminyanku. It was the president. As in, Nanado is my friend. We're all in parliament together. If he wants to be president, I'll pray for him." There were people who actually interpreted that to mean that he didn't support Akufo-Addo, and that was the beginning of the end of Joe Bidwansa as member of parliament.
But how does that relate to?
No, I'm making the point that
in the Northern Territory,
I'm making the point that was Akufo-Addo's campaign strategy in 2014. He was so popular in the party that when he gets to the constituencies, when he gets to the regions, he sits there, addresses the people briefly. People just take the microphones and talk on his behalf.
Yeah,
so I am saying I am saying that we cannot just use, hold on a minute, we cannot just use, for instance, to say, let's even admit that Akufo-Addo goes to the north, which is not the case. Let's even admit, for purpose of analysis, that he goes to the north and goes to campaign that I will bring one of your own.
No, but he already had him on the ticket.
Yes,
that's my point.
No.
That holds his sway.
No, but that ticket, at the time he was campaigning, he had not brought him back. So let's just do that.
But my point is that
he had used him. No, but he had used him in 2008
exactly.
and 2012.
I'm talking about. I'm isolating this year.
Yeah, but you see,
post he using Baumia, and this year post using him again in 2020.
My point is
that definitely will hold sway.
No, but my point is that my point
in an election which has been very tribal.
Yeah, but
in the NPP,
no, but my point
where we have Dankwa Buzia Dombo, he's going there. Even if he doesn't say anything, the mere fact that he's carrying one of their own will hold sway.
No, but you see, the point is that we must be able to see these things and use them and say, we must always look at the impact of things.
Yeah.
When we do when you do the regression, you say, how did this impact this? And that is why I am saying that. When you do the analysis, I am saying that in 2014, for instance, in 2014, Akufo-Addo was the party, was the everything. In fact, it was Akufo-Addo who said that Akufo-Addo gave delegates transportation to even
but there are many factors that contribute to Akufo-Addo's dominance there. And I'm saying you cannot discount in the Northern Territories. His dominance across the country is well known. No dispute there. But you cannot discount the fact that he had one of your own when he goes to campaign on the ticket. He has been on the ticket twice.
In 2007, right? Akufo-Addo's dominance in the Northern region was as a result
in the
Northern region of the party was as a result of one thing. Kofi Malik Al-Hassan Yakubu. Check this. Let the NPP guys begin to talk, and they will tell you. In fact, it was part of the reason Malik Al-Hassan Yakubu lost the Yendi seat in the 2008 election. And there's the belief, I'll say this today, there's a belief that Aliyu Mahama actually was the mastermind behind his loss. Speak to Kofi Adda, and he will tell you of blessed memory. So he's not here today. But if you speak to Kofi Adda, for instance, he will tell you that his loss in 2012 was actually masterminded by elements who had not forgiven him for campaigning for Akufo-Addo. So, you see, the thing is that you just cannot say Akufo-Addo's victory in the North was because Akufo-Addo's victory in the North was a result of a lot of things. And I will tell you something.
But we agree on that. But all the elements. So, the point I'm urging in politics, there are no absolutes. That's a fundamental point. There are factors that contribute anybody's strength, anybody's weakness in any territory, right? The mere fact that you have one of them will definitely be a factor to at least put your foot in the door in a territory where they celebrate him. In Ghana, where politics is so tribal, it will be a factor, right, in your popularity in a particular geographic region where they've been consistently felt underrepresented. My point is, it is a factor that you cannot discount in considering the totality of issues that made Akufo-Addo popular, at least in that part of the country, right? For Alan, let's go to some numbers in terms of his performance.
But at that point that you've made, let me come in. When you say it's a factor, it is not in doubt it could be a factor.
But that's, so we agree on that. That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying that
you cannot discount
other factors.
I agree with that
bringing in the other factors.
I agree with that.
And then we can now begin to rate the factors.
I agree with that.
And indicate which one holds the highest.
Let's do that, because one of the things that we're doing is also to track general elections, right? And the reason why we've done this is because of the point I was making about the tribal element in our politics, the ethnic element in our politics. Where the person hails from is important in evaluating his contribution to a political party. He comes from the Ashanti region, right?
Yeah.
So what we've done is to look at the Kyerematen effect, right? And we say the Kyerematen effect because we are going to the Ashanti region to do that. Because he comes from, that's his constitution, that's his home region. So you have to look at what he's done there. And you've seen the performance of the party. And what you see on the screen there, for those listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM, you have 77% the NPP scores in 2004. And then in 2008, they score 72%. In 2012, they score 70%. And you see the graph there keep moving up and down. And one of the things, Winston, that we've always said in our election headquarters analysis, for the NPP to win the national elections, they always need above 75%. Anytime they're falling below 75%, they would have lost elections.
But by 2020, then the whole thing changes.
But that's why I say the 2020 elections is an outlier election for many, many reasons. One,
of course,
it's an outlier election.
Greater Accra.
It's one of those elections you have to isolate. So look at Kyerematen, and something very interesting begins to happen as we begin to look at the numbers, Winston. That when Kyerematen in the primaries, right, in 2007, he loses to Akufo-Addo, the party in Kumasi, right, in the Ashanti region, broadly, then drops by 4.5 percentage points in the main elections. The point I'm trying to make is roots matter. Your constituency matter. And there's a reason why Akufo-Addo down the line, we'll come to the 2006 elections, why he made him the promise first. Because he wanted him there to help his showing. You come to 2008 elections, Winston. We also begin to see that play out.
2012 elections.
2012 elections. We see that again play out. Alan again loses to Akufo-Addo in the primary we just told you about. And Ashanti drops again by 1.1%. Okay. So look at those 3 elections, 2004 to 2012. And we begin to see something emerging. The reason I don't want to say it's a trend yet is what happens when we go to the 2006 elections.
But this is the point here.
You know, Alan goes on a campaign to Akufo-Addo.
Yes, he's
in the Ashanti region.
No, the whole country. In 2016, he goes everywhere. In fact, I'll tell you a story. In 2015, it was actually part of the last interviews I did before I left Takoradi.
Yeah.
Akufo-Addo comes to Takoradi and he comes for an interview. When he comes for that interview, he comes into the studio. We started discussing. But sitting in front of me are Akufo-Addo and Alan Kyerematen. Only the two of them.
Yeah.
So in the course of the interview, I ask Akufo-Addo a question, he answers. Then I say, let me get to Alan Kyerematen. Yes, go to him. In the Western region, Alan Kyerematen from 2015 was on the campaign tour with Akufo-Addo. And it was part of the reason why one of the very first persons Akufo-Addo promised a position. In fact, in Kyerematen in 2016, one of the things Akufo-Addo said about Alan Kyerematen was that this is a man who had gone around with him. He appreciated his support. There are those who believe that this singular act of going on the campaign tour with Akufo-Addo played a role in the increase of votes in the Ashanti region.
And you see what we're seeing there on the screen, on radio. The last time, before 2016, the party hit north of 76% was in 2004, right? And so the point you're making is, you come, and after that, they did not show well.
Yeah.
And in those cases, they lost elections. You come to 2016 when he joins the campaign team in Ashanti region in particular so strongly, it moves the thing to 76%. And they win elections handsomely, as we've been saying already.
And the reason Alan is talking about the fact that he can give the NPP 2 million votes in the Ashanti region.
So that is important, that effect. But let's come to 2020. And something interesting happens. And I was looking at these numbers when I was looking at the research, and something struck me. So he delivers this when he was in opposition and had only been promised a trade minister position. And he did so well in the Ashanti region. But he wasn't in government. Then he joins the government. He now wields even more influence. The Ashanti, faction in the NPP has been rewarded. Akufo-Addo has kept his word. So you would expect that should rub off in the Ashanti region. And hopefully they should do far more there than what he did when he was just a promise. And then you begin to compare. In fact, in the 2020 elections, if you compare, with him now in government, and with him now obviously now doesn't have any other reason than to campaign because he's also in it and needs to sustain the party. The party's performance there in 2020 is the joint third worst performance in the Ashanti region. The last time they hit 72% was what we saw there in 2000. In fact, if you go back to 1996, they had 65%, right? And you come to 2008, 72%. That is the second worst performance. And then you deliver him. That was a joint third worst performance in the Ashanti region in the history of the elections in 30 years. And that raised for me a few more questions, right? Why, when you were actually it took a lot of credit here, as we've just illustrated in 2016, because of the contributions there. But when you're actually a member of government, when you actually now can show to your lead, the kings and queen Ashanti region that have been rewarded, he failed to deliver those same numbers for Akufo-Addo.
Okay, so by this time, the Ashanti region had begun complaining about neglect. By this time, and we monitored the 2020 election,
roads, etc., were issues
in the Ashanti region. By this time, they were complaining of how the government had neglected them. By this time, Alan Kyerematen was not on the campaign trail with Akufo-Addo like he did in 2020.
But he should have been, because he's been rewarded.
Well, I do not know the dynamics that happened. But what I see is what I discuss. So what I saw at the time is what I am telling you. But I know that they complained. I know that he was not everywhere with Akufo-Addo like he was in 2016. But the reality is that, as you may have seen, by 2020, there were issues in the country. By 2020, the Ashanti region was unhappy with the NPP. And you probably may have seen NPP people consistently trying.
But you see, the point we make always about effect and lineage. If you take credit for one, you have to take credit for the next two.
And that's why I've told you.
Right? And that for me, his Ashanti base, anybody analyzing this in Bawumia's camp will look at this and say, well, if that is his base, why didn't he deliver when he was in government? And that could count in campaigning, can be used against him in there. By the way, we need to take a break now. This is the first part. When we return, we are focusing on Dr. Bawumia. Now we've seen the analysis on Alan Kyerematen, but what is the Bawumia story? Remember, the Super Delegates coverage is brought to you in association with Petrosol. Clean fuel in full quantity is always a delightful experience. Every drop matters, yes, just as every penny counts. Did you know good quality fuel enhances your vehicle performance and reduces maintenance costs? Take no risk. In times like this, all you need is value for your money. Look no further. Drive to the next Petrosol fuel station. Yes, Petrosol, your go-to station for accurate quantity of high-quality fuel. Be a happy customer. Fill with smiles, drive more miles, and save more money. Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol, always a delightful experience. When we come back, the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, is our guest. We're just going to look ahead to tomorrow very briefly, preparations, etc. And then we'll do a comparison of what we've seen with the first front runner and the second one also, Baumia, comparing him to Alan Kyerematen. And then the rest of the field will also come to play. Of course, tomorrow there'll be more. But stay with us after this.